Hello world, and welcome to this edition of Tech on Fire with Blaze. Today we're going to be talking about virtual network peering and virtual network gateways and how you can use these to create rather robust network topologies on Microsoft Azure. We're going to be using a hub and spoke topology to demonstrate how you can use VPNs and peerings on Azure to do something rather cool on Azure with these various technologies. So a hub and spoke topology really starts with a hub VNet, and in Azure this would be a VNet where you have connected to it a virtual network gateway, and the hub VNet will have on it a gateway subnet that is designated for the virtual network gateway. And then it might have additional subnets that are subsets of the address space that is defined for this particular VNet. So in this case, I'm using 10.0.0.0/16, and then my subnets have /24 subsets of that address space. Now, once I have my hub set up like this, I can start adding in spokes to it. So a spoke would look something like this. I would have a non-overlapping address space, in this case 10.1.0.0/16, and then subnets that are some subset of that address space defined as part of that VNet. Now, once I have those subnets and that address space set up, I can create what's called a VNet peering between my hub and my spoke. And basically, I go into Azure and I create a peering on both sides of the peering. I create one in the hub and one in the spoke. And once that's created, I can route traffic from my hub back to my spoke and from my spoke back to my hub. And with that in mind, I can also add in additional spokes to my hub. So you can see how I get this hub and spoke topology by simply adding in more and more spokes. In this case, I have 2, but I can have 3, 4, 100. There's really no limit. Once I have all of these spokes added in to my hub, I can route traffic between spokes by way of my hub, or I can even route traffic from things like road warriors who log into my hub by way of a VPN, and then they can access resources on my VNets that are either my hub or my spokes, because traffic will traverse that hub VNet and then get routed to one of the spokes. Or I can have on-premise systems connect back to resources in the spokes or on the hub VNet by way of a site-to-site VPN. So this is a common way to set up a hybrid cloud on Microsoft Azure using this hub and spoke topology. Now, depending on how much scale you need, depends on which technologies you'll actually select, whether you use a VPN on your virtual network gateway or use ExpressRoute, or you may have more than one spoke. You might have literally hundreds of spokes with hundreds of VMs connected all together using this similar topology. But the bottom line is you can actually create this for simple networks, or you can create very complex networks using this hub and spoke topology with VNet peerings and VPNs. So we're going to do a demo on how to do this, and you can actually do it rather quickly on Microsoft Azure. Just in the Azure portal, you can configure all this and have it up and running in a matter of no time. Now here in the Azure portal, you can see that I have a hub and spoke resource group, and I'm going to be using a hub and spoke topology to show you how you can create virtual networks that are peered together, and then use a VPN gateway to connect into your hub and then access resources on your spokes by way of connecting to your hub using that hub and spoke topology. Now, you can see here I already have some basic resources defined. I have a hub VNet and I have a VPN gateway. It's a virtual network gateway, or sometimes called a VPN gateway, on Azure. And I have a public IP address associated with that. Now, I deployed this already because it takes a while for this resource to deploy. So I'm going to come in here and show you what that actually looks like to deploy it without actually deploying it. So I'm going to type in VPN, and I'm going to select virtual network gateway right here. And then once I have click create, it's going to take me to the blade to configure this guy. And you can give it a name, VPN-GW, select a region. You can select the gateway type. Now, by default, I'm just going to take a VPN, and that's essentially a VPN over the internet using the public internet to connect to your Azure virtual network, or you can use ExpressRoute. But what ExpressRoute is a low-level connection similar to an MPLS connection. It's basically a circuit between your data center on-premise and Microsoft Azure that's brokered by your telco. So what Azure has done is reached out to a lot of the popular ISPs out there and asked them to support this low-level connection by way of ExpressRoute. And then what happens is you get a piece of hardware that you install in your on-premise data center, and then your telco will then connect your data center to Microsoft Azure using that piece of hardware, and it provides a low latency connection and also a high bandwidth connection to Azure from your on-premise network. So that's an option for building out hybrid type connectivity between on-premise and public cloud offerings for on Microsoft Azure. But if you don't need that level of speed or latency, then a VPN over the public internet should serve you just fine. Now, here I can use a VPN type of gateway, route-based or policy-based. I'm going to go with route-based here and let the routes control the traffic. And now I can pick a SKU, and basically the SKUs will differ based on the number of connections and aggregate bandwidth that's available. You can select basic or gateway 1, 2, or 3, and each one of those have different limits. You can look those SKUs up online. Then you could select a network to connect it to. I don't have any currently networks that I have available that I can connect this to. However, if you have a virtual network, you could select that there, and then you would create a new IP address and then to connect to this guy as well. And that, in the case of mine, I selected VPN -IP and then it added it to that resource group. And once you hit review and create, it will go about creating this virtual network gateway. And I already have one installed. So I'm going to open this guy up just so you can take a look at it. I selected the basic SKU here, and I have a VPN type, route-based VPN type, and then I have the public IP address that's been associated with this. So now I can connect to this guy by way of a VPN client, or I can set up a site-to-site VPN using something like IPsec. But let's go ahead and create our spokes on this VPN and Hub VNet here so that I can actually show you how this is done. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and add in a new virtual network. I'm going to call it, let's call it VNet. Search for VNet and then select virtual network. And then go ahead and create this resource. And I'm going to choose, let's call it spoke 1, not spoke 2, and then give it an IP, say 10.1.0.0/16 for the address space. And then, oops, what did I overwrote my 10.1/16 for the address space. And I'm already using that. That's fine. I'm not going to be peering it with that network. When you select your address space, you want to make sure that it doesn't overlap any of the other virtual networks that you intend to put into your hub and spoke topology, because it will make it very difficult to peer those networks together. And since this one's used by another virtual network that I have deployed, but I'm not going to be peering it with that one, so that's fine. I'm going to select this subscription, and then I'm going to put it into my hub and spoke resource group, and then I'm going to choose the same region that I have the other one in, and then I'm going to give it a subnet. I'm going to call it subnet 1. You can have as many subnets as you want. I'm only going to use one for my purposes, and then I'm going to use a /24 for this one's IP space, and I can use DDoS protection as basics. I don't need endpoints. I don't need the firewall. I'm going to click create and let that go ahead and create that network. And let's go back to add another resource here, so I can come in here and look for VNet again and go ahead and create a new VNet for spoke 2. Spoke 2 here, and I'm going to do a 10.2.0.0/16 for this one's IP space. same subscription. I'm going to put it in the same resource group. The thing about VNets, though, on Azure is the peering can be done from different subscriptions on Azure. So you can peer a customer subscription back to yours if you want. And it doesn't have to be in the same region either. So you can put these in different regions. I'm just doing this in the same region for simplicity's sake. And let's go ahead and drop the IP address in there, /24 on this subnet 1. And now I have that in there. So this is otherwise identical to the other VNet I just created, Spoke 1 and Spoke 2. So here I should have hub VNet, Spoke 1 and Spoke 2. Now to peer these together, I need to start by coming into my hub VNet and then initiate a peering here. So when you have your VNet created, you have this option called peering. So I'm going to come over here and add to this, and I'm going to call it Spoke 1 for the peering. That way it's indicative of Spoke 1 to -hub. And I'm going to use this for the name, put it in the same resource group, and I'm going to peer this one to Spoke 1. Now, down here on the bottom, I have some options here. I can allow virtual network access from hub VNet to Spoke 1. I want that enabled because that allows traffic to flow between these two. And I can also say configure forwarded traffic from this here. So this allows me to have traffic that traverses the hub VNet to Spoke 1. So if I wanted to route traffic from, say, Spoke 2 to Spoke 1, I could do that and have that traffic traverse the hub VNet from Spoke 2 to Spoke 1 by way of routes and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that. And this option here, allow gateway transit, will enable me to have traffic from my remote sites or my remote clients transit the hub VNet back to my Spoke VNet as well. So I'm going to enable that as well. And with those options, I can create this peering. So I'm going to go ahead and create the same peering for Spoke 2-hub. And basically the same configuration here for Spoke 2. Enable this and that, and create this peering. So these peerings will take a second to show up, and then the peering status will show up as initiated. So let's switch back to it and see. There they are. So now it says initiated. So what I have to do now that this is initiated, I have to go back over to each one of these virtual networks and then do the same thing from the other side. So let's go over here to this resource. And let's look at its peering. So I just clicked on that resource, and I'm on Spoke 1, the Spoke 1 VNet now. I can come back over here to peerings and then add the peering for Spoke 1 to the hub from the other side. So you have to do it on both sides to peer these networks together. You can't just initiate it from one side. I'm going to peer it back to the hub VNet here, and allow access. I'm going to enable that. I'm going to allow traffic forwarded from Spoke 1 to VNet, and then I'm going to use remote gateways here because the remote VNet has a gateway attached to it. So I want to enable that. So I want to use that VPN gateway on my hub on this Spoke. And then once I have that, I can click OK, and this peering will be added to Spoke 1. Now, let's come back over here, and it's updating. So it did accept it. Refresh that, and there it is, connected. I don't have gateway transit enabled because this network doesn't have a gateway, but however, it is using the gateway on my hub VNet. So let's come back over here to my hub VNet and look at my peerings here, and you notice that one is connected now. Let's go ahead and add another VNet peering for Spoke 2. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a peering here on Spoke 2, Spoke 2-hub, and it's basically going to take the same options that my Spoke 1 VNet had, and I'm going to add in this Spoke to this particular VNet, and it'll take it just a second to deploy. And once we have that ready, we should be able to see it's connected and enabled. So now I have my Spoke set up on my VNet, and I have my my hub VNet, and I can now pass traffic back and forth between my hub VNet and my spokes on this particular hub and spoke topology. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect up my local machine here to this particular hub and spoke topology here by way of a point-to-site VPN rather than configure a site-to-site VPN. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm back here in my VPN gateway for my virtual network for my hub, and I want to configure this for point-to-site VPN. So I'm going to go ahead and select point-to-site configuration here. And inside of this, I've already typed in an address pool for this, but if you wanted to enter one, you would want to assign an address pool that will be assigned to the clients that will be connected to your VPN. So I'm not currently using the address space 10.3.0.0/24. Which should be fine for this application. Now, it wants the root certificate. Now, in order to get a root certificate, I need to generate a root certificate. Now, there's any number of ways to generate a root certificate. The main thing you'll want to have, though, is a root certificate that is in the base64 encoded format. So basically something that looks like this. And this is my root certificate that I generated for this demo. And you can use any tool like OpenSSL to do this, some online tools, or even some PowerShell commands to generate this. But once you have this certificate, you want to copy everything between the top line and the bottom line here, and copy that, and then come back into your configuration and type in the name of your root certificate, whatever it might be, and then paste in that data into public certificate data and save this. And it will take a while for this to save. Give it about 5 minutes. So after this saves, we'll come back and connect up to this. Okay, now I'm back in my VPN gateway here. I want to download the client now that everything is saved. I can come back over here to my point-to-site configuration and hit download VPN client, and this will download the VPN client to my local desktop. Okay, now that my download is done, I'm going to go ahead and open this guy up, and my three options here are generic, AMD 64, and x86. I'm going to select Windows, AMD 64, and then run this executable here, and this will set up my client here. I'm going to have to select run anyway because it's not a signed package. And once I have this installed, I should be able to connect to it. So the VPN client is now installed. Okay, now that I have the client installed, I can come down here to my tool tray and launch the context menu for my networks that are available. And then I'm going to launch this one. Notice it's the same name as my VNet for my hub. I'm going to open that up, and then I'm going to click on it here in my VPN settings for Windows 10 and connect. It's going to pop up a few windows that I'm going to allow connect, and then hit continue. It's going to add some routes and then establish a connection by way of the VPNs built into Windows 10. Now that that's connected, you can come down to your network settings if you need to, and then come into adapter settings here. And you notice I have an adapter called Hub VNet. This is a WAN mini port SSTP connection, and I come down here to status to get the IP settings for this particular VPN. And I'm using 10.3.0.7 for the IP address, and that's in that pool of addresses that I assigned whenever I logged into this VPN. So I'm going to close this out. And I should be able to connect to a resource that's on one of those spokes if everything is up and running. So what I did while I was offline is I went ahead and created a virtual machine called Spoke 1 VM1. And this is on my virtual network, Spoke 1 and Subnet 1. And I remember I peered Spoke 1 back to my hub VNet. So I can copy this address and then launch PuTTY. And if all goes well, I should be able to paste this address in and open up a connection to this virtual machine by way of SSH and log into it. So no smoke and mirrors here. This is just using a VPN connection back to Azure by way of the hub. And then this virtual machine is on Spoke 1. And then it's routing the traffic back up to Spoke 1. And now I can then administer this VPN over a VPN this VM over a VPN that I have in my hub and spoke topology. So this is how you can configure a hub and spoke topology using VPNs and VNet peering on Azure to create some rather complex network topologies with Microsoft Azure. So this wraps up our video for today. So thanks for watching this edition of Tech on Fire with Blaze. If you like this content, please consider visiting us online at www.wintelect.com, and there you can find about services that Wintelect offers, including training and consulting services. Also, please consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button and clicking the bell icon to get notifications when new content becomes available, and also comment down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at @TheOneMule, and also follow Wintelect on Twitter at WintelectNow or at Wintelect. We are constantly posting things about Azure-related technologies and things related to software development. You can also reach us by email at consulting@wintelect.com. Until next time, thank you.